Now I can actually do this properly. Yeah, let's start with a little warm up of on the feet. We're just going to be rotating on the balls of the foot, switching from one end of the weight from one side of the body to the other side. Just kind of warming up our hips, warming up our legs. And now I'm driving it through kind of the back leg, whichever leg ends in the back, that's what I'm driving it through. All right, we're going to do the same thing, but now driving it from the front leg. Then, now the back leg is going to rotate out. I'm basically thinking I'm taking the knee that's in the back and I'm pulling it to the other side, pulling it to the other side. Getting your external rotators engaged as you pull around, pull, pull. Your hips can just be hanging out. All right. With your back fist, your right leg is going to be forward. You're going to be driving the motion through your back leg. I'm going to be delivering a downward blow. And if you have a knife or something along those lines, I'm just going to have it for illustration. I'm basically delivering a downward blow. I'm andretto, if I'm geared towards the camera, driving it through my back leg. Then prepare the weapon from the other side and strike again. Well, you can do this sideways again so that you can see my leg, pushing from the back leg, pulling from the back leg, driving the whole thing from my back foot. Do a full attack, striking into someone's collarbone, driving it all the way down to around the ribs, and strike back. It's a warm-up, not necessarily a particular martial skill. Nice big rotational blows. Switch hands. Keep your right foot forward. You're driving it from the right foot. Same idea. Driving in with your right foot. Driving out with your right foot. Switch directions. Back foot still driving it, so now your left foot is forward. You're delivering mangiatos and reversals with your right leg driving the action. Right, switch hands. Left leg still forward, driving the action from the front leg. All right, put your weapon down. A little bit of pendulum going forward, going back. If you want to have a weapon, you can have it in your right hand. You're just striking forward, striking back. Remember that the pendulum has a four-stage part. Weight in the back leg, weight in the center, reach your front foot forward, transfer the weight. Transfer, gather, extend, transfer.
So the way you just described it, it sounds like the leg is leading, but it looks like when you're doing it, the blade is leading.
Yeah, so don't worry too much about what the blade is doing. It's really about moving the legs, having the weight to be able to control the transferring all the way through your motion. All right, switch legs. All right, grab a sword. Let's keep on warming up, and now let's warm up with a sword in your hands. So the topic of the class is attacks to sword hand. Because we don't have a sword hand to attack, I'm going to continue on a little bit with feints, attacks to misses, and a little bit of attack to sword hands. But we'll do some of the more interesting approaches to how to use a feint more strategically, more tactically for different things. But first, let's warm up our hands. So what I want to start with is, I'm going to deliver fendentes, and I'm going to do this for 30 seconds. I'm going to prepare the fendente on my outside line, strike through. I'm going to cut, bring it all the way through on my inside line, cut, bounce to the outside, cut through, bounce. So I'm just altering between stramazzone to the outside, stramazzone to the inside, outside, inside. And as you do this, keep your hands extended in front of you. Make sure that you're still striking through your target, which would be someone's head. Then you can slice through, strike, strike. So what I'm working on is making sure that the edge alignment is still there. So they're all fendentes. So they're all fendentes from the right side. We're going to do this again on the opposite side. I'm striking a reverse of fendente, bounce, strike through. Right. Bounce, strike through. Bounce, strike through. So all the blows are now coming from my left side. Back to the right side. If you want to add a little bit of leg work, you're free to do so. I'm going to keep on facing the camera just for simplicity. I'm striking from the right, bounce from the right, through, right, bounce, right, through. Oops. All right, from the left shoulder. Roll the reverse fendentes. Strike, bounce, strike, through. Strike, bounce, strike, through. Keeping your sword in front of you, we're going to be doing the rising blows, kind of mezzano-like actions. So I'll describe it and then we'll do it a few times. What I'm doing here is my sword, say I just cut someone's hand. I'm going to turn the edge so that the flat is facing towards you. And from here, I'm just going to spin the sword on the disc. It's going to rotate around and it should rise on the opposite line. Then I'm going to turn the edge flat. I'm going to pull on the pommel, and I should go back towards where I started. So turn the edge, push on the pommel, strike. Turn the edge, pull on the pommel, strike. So it's like doing a mezzano. So if I were to just do a mezzano from side to side, it looks like, oops, I'm gonna hit my ceiling. It just looks like I'm doing this in front of me. I'm just changing the angle so that it rises into someone's hand or face. Then turn the edge, strike. All right, relax. I was waiting for the beep, but we are on a 2-minute timer now, so we're going to do this for 2 minutes, which is going to be difficult. So that was the back on the last few classes. That is actually just how we accomplish the stramazzone that leads into a rising blow into someone's hands. That is the mechanic of it. That's just what we were practicing. So from previous classes, we're coming through delivering a feint via stramazzone and turning it into a rising blow. That's just doing that back and forth. So if you have any questions, you can ask me afterwards as well. I'll happily address any of those the discrepancies there. But let's actually get started on some of the more interesting ways to deliver feints, attacks to misses, and other kind of mechanical things. So first feint that I want to work on, it's gonna look like so. I'm going to deliver a fendente. If nothing happens, my opponent gets struck by this fendente. But what I actually want to do is, as they begin to parry, I'm going to push my hands up into a finestra and deliver a thrust outside of their sword. So I'm going to use here my assistant with a sword, my nice little foam sword. Whoop, there we go. So what I'm doing here is I'm attacking on their inside line so that they're forced to engage. What ends up happening is as they come to parry, I lift up my hands, pushing my hands away from their sword to strike high into their face. There's a disadvantage of this tactically. I am exposing my hands against my opponent for the time being, not an issue, but I would often do this against someone that I know that is going to parry, or someone that's very worried about the defense. I might do this against them, expecting them to parry, and as they deliver their parry, I come up into an attack, bypassing their sword. So we're going to do this from both sides, and it's going to have 4 steps. I'm going to deliver fendente. I'm going to recover. I'm going to initiate a fendente, and as my partner, well, as I imagine a parry, I'm going to push my pommel up into finestra and step strongly to my right. Then I recover to the opposite side. I begin my reversal fendente, and nothing happens. I deliver a cut into my opponent's face. I recover. I do the same thing. I initiate my attack from the left. They start parrying. I push the pommel up to go around them and strike with a thrust outside of their sword. So what we're going to do for the next couple minutes is just after all those 4 steps. Fendente, feint to a thrust, reversal fendente, reversal to a thrust. I'm going to do it sideways. I'll tell you when the time starts. So we can just do this a few more times. You have 30 seconds to ask any questions. I'm delivering a fendente, strike, then I recover. Initiate a fendente, step around to strike over my partner's face. Recover, posterior una sinistra. Reverso fendente, strike, recover, reverso fendente, strike with a punta, recover. All right, starting now, 2 minutes, go ahead and begin. Fendente, recover. Fendente with feint, recover. Reverso, recover. Reverso with feint, recover. Fendente, recover. Fendente with feint, recover. Reverso, recover. Reverso with feint, recover. And notice here, I'm adding one important thing. When I do my feint, I strike, I close the line by rolling into posa longa. Then I can back up. I don't want to really recover with my hands up high. As I strike, I'm imagining I'm striking someone's face. I close the line by rolling into posa longa so that my sword is intercepting my opponent's sword. Then I can back up. Okay, keep on going. Fendente. Fendente with feint. Recover. Reverso. Reverso with feint. Recover. Fendente. Fendente with feint. Recover. Reverso. Reverso with feint. Recover. Fendente. Fendente with feint. Recover. 2 more times on either side. Fendente with feint. Recover. Fendente. Fendente with feint. Recover. Reverso. Reverso with feint. Recover. Last time. Fendente. Recover. Fendente with feint. Recover. Reverso. Reverso with feint. Recover. Okay, so this is a nice way to deliver a feint of line. Instead of being a feint via stramazzone, I am presenting my sword. They do something about it, I move the sword somewhere else. We're going to compound this with an attack to miss. So this is once you start practicing feints, counter feints, and a bunch of things in context, one deceptive action typically may not be enough to deceive your opponent unless you time it really, really well. So one way to make it better, make the timing work better for you, is making multiple deceptive actions. So how this would work out, this is how the play would be built. I'm imagining I'm delivering my fendente to my opponent. They do nothing, I strike them. Now my opponent is defending, I might initiate my attack, and I come to strike high with a thrust. If someone has just parried that sword, and I want the two of you, or anyone else that is watching, to imagine that you need to defend against this cut. Then you need to defend against this thrust with as little motion as possible. How do you imagine yourself defending? So I'm delivering a thrust that comes high essentially on the inside of your sword. How do you defend against that high thrust? So Eric has a solution. Eric is lifting up into Fenestra. That's one option. You're trying to, you initiated a parry. You're trying to defend against this thrust. The problem is that lifting up your sword is fairly slow. So it may work if you have time, but it's a difficult action to pull off. So what I have and what I'm usually expecting in this case is, if you're imagining you're attacking me on this side, I am parrying, you begin to thrust high, I need to point my sword at your debole to close that line. So as the sword starts elevating, I need to follow that debole by placing my mezza spada ideally against your debole.
Right.
So what that does is it opens up the other side of the body. So how this gets compounded is, I'm initiating my attack, I'm thrusting to the outside. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop my point, essentially disengage underneath my partner's swords, and deliver a reversal to their face. So here's the mechanic, how that works out. I'm initiating my fendente, I thrust to the outside. I can do it in a little step just to get my opponent to move a little bit more, drop the point, and kind of like doing a half stramazzone, I am coming back with a reversal on the opposite line. So if I do it from the side, I'm initiating fendente, follow through with a thrust, drop the point, and strike a reversal, stepping with my left foot to the other side. I'll do it from the opposite angle, initiating fendente, follow through with a thrust, drop my point underneath their hands, and strike back on the opposite line. So for the night, I want to do it from both sides. So let's do it together from the right side, then we'll do it from the left side. I'm starting my fendente. I step to the right with a thrust, drop the point, and deliver a small cut into my opponent's face or arms, stepping to the left. Then back up, sword on the left shoulder. Same idea here. Starting the reverse of fendente, deliver the thrust feint, drop underneath their hands, and strike a fendente back to their hands. And I'll do this from the left side facing you. Delivering fendente, thrust, disengage, fendente from the opposite side. Okay, 2 minutes, that's what we're gonna do. Just right on, we're gonna do the compounded action. So, initiate from the right. Fendente, thrust, disengage, reverso, recover. Sword on the left shoulder. Reverso, thrust, disengage, mandretto fendente, recover. Fendente, thrust, disengage, reverso fendente, recover. Reverso, thrust, disengage, mandretto fendente, recover. From the right side, I'm just going to call them out at your own pace, or you can go with me. Mandretto, go. Reverso, go. Mandretto, go. Reverso, go. Mandritto, 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 go. Reverso, go. And pause. So I really want to do this with a partner. I'm just going to make it all better. What is the goal of the feint or the attack to miss? What are you trying to accomplish overall?
You want them to open up a new line.
Yeah, you want them to open a line. There's another way to word this, which would be to create an opportunity. So if you want to strike, part of it, the opening up, is you want to have an opportunity to strike your opponent or do something better. What is a characteristic of a good opportunity? So what would be an opportunity that you want to take as opposed to an opportunity that you don't want to take?
An opportunity you want to take will allow you to keep cover of their sword and keep yourself safe while you strike them.
Cover is not necessary. It is if you're following the true fight, but safety is important. You want to be safe. What if something goes wrong? What part of this opportunity you want to have so that if something goes wrong, you don't get struck?
You've got enough time and space to recover.
Time and space. In other words, proportion. A good characteristic of an opportunity is you have enough proportion to respond. So as Eric mentioned, it's the idea that there is a big enough opening. A good characteristic of a large opening is that your opponent's going to take a long time to do anything about it. Even if they're attacking, even if they're efficient, if the opening is large enough, it will give you an opportunity to act. So one of the nice things about this compounded multi-action is it gives you multiple opportunities. And how I'm going to change the action to tie into some of the stuff we saw last month is I can initiate my attack, I turn my thrust, I begin to disengage, and I half sword to enter into a grappling position. So how this becomes different is I'm thinking about this, instead of thinking about it as an opportunity to strike with an edge, I'm thinking about it as an opportunity to get close enough to my opponent. Maybe they're wearing armor, maybe they're just really good maybe they're just really strong and I can't really push them out of the way. So I begin my fendente, I thrust. As I'm trying to parry this, I disengage into my version of Serpentina Altara. I'm just disengaging into my hand, my Mezzaspada into my hand, and I can roll into Breve Serpentina to deliver a thrust. Or I can stay in Serpentina Altara if that's where I need to go. So the compounded action becomes feint, half sword. And I can do it from the opposite side too. And in this case, I'm going to let go with my lead hand. I'm beginning the reverso, thrust, drop the Mezzaspada. I'm going to grab the sword. In this case, I'm actually going to go thumbs forward so that I can continue through. And now I'm in a bit of a serpentina, but on the opposite side. So let's try this out as a drill. I'm going to start with the sword on the right side, beginning my fendente, thrust, disengage into a half sword. Now I'm in Breve Serpentina, recover. And you can actually add a recovery by coming to Vera Croce and coming back into Donna Sinistra. Now we begin the action from the left side, reverse the fendente, thrust, disengage into basically half sword position. And notice that my hand is actually fairly high. In case there's a sword in there, it can actually still keep me safe. Then I come to Breve Serpentina to deliver thrust, back to vera croce, donna, posta di donna. So let's try this out for a couple minutes. Starting in vera croce and posta di donna, begin the fendente, thrust, begin to disengage into a half swording position, and then in breve serpentina, back to vera croce, posta di donna sinistra. Reverse fendente, thrust, coming to half sword, and in breve serpentina, back to vera croce, back to the posta di donna. Fendente, thrust, half sword, to breve serpentina, vera croce, donna sinistra. Reverso, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna. I'll do it sideways so that you guys can keep on following along. Cut from the right. Cut, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna sinistra. Reverso, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna. Fendente, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna sinistra. Reverso, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna. Fendente, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna sinistra. Reverso, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna. Fendente, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna sinistra. Reverso, thrust, half sword, breve serpentina, vera croce, donna. All right. Any questions? No? So I like these actions that suddenly go into half sword because the feint can be an opportunity to grapple. You could consider this as, I could, for instance, come in for my fendente, deliver a thrust, begin the disengage underneath, but use this as an opportunity to come in for a pommel strike. So that is a way to create an opportunity if your opponent is not giving it to you. Remember that all of this requires the context of what your opponent is doing. So this may not work on all scenarios, but it's a cool mechanic to practice from going from sword grip to half sword grip. So here's another one that I like. There we go. How to remember what I want to do. So we're going to go back to a feint via stramazzone that follows through with a blow to the same side. So imagine my opponent is trying to parry, but maybe they're in armor, maybe they're not, and this is mostly for fun. Also, you will never be able to do this in combat because it bypasses their armor. I'm going to deliver my feint via stramazzone, and I'm going to use this opportunity to go into a murder strike because that is fun. So I'm delivering my feint from my right side. I'm beginning my stramazzone. I'm going to push on the palm of my sword so that the blade flicks forward. I'm going to grab the middle of my sword. I could follow through in breve serpentina, perfectly valid to continue there. But because I want to do this differently, I'm going to strike slightly different. So I'm beginning my feint via stramazzone. There's a moment where I'm in a half swording position in case I do need to keep myself safe. That is important because you're going to move through and strike with the handle of your sword. If I do it from this side, you can see it a little bit better. I'm delivering my fendente, feint, come into breve serpentina for a moment, turn to mortal, and then strike through. I'm striking towards the camera. I'm striking on the same line. Part of it because the sword, otherwise crossing my hands with a sword grip is a little bit awkward. Also because I'm assuming I have at least armored arms. Probably wouldn't do this against if I am unarmored myself. There's just too much room to get casually wounded by the sword. But if I am in an armored situation, I could initiate my attack, switch to a mortal, and then deliver my blow right there. From the opposite side, same action. Starting the sword on the left shoulder and beginning my reverse fendente. I begin my feint via stramazzone. I turn into a bit of a serpentina, but holding onto the pommel. And then I just hold on to my forte, and then I can deliver the blow, the mandretta now, from my left side. So, starting in sword on the left shoulder, feint via stramazzone, turn to the opposite side.
And if you take your pommel to your left side there.
Yes, so I'm letting go of the, letting go of the lead hand so that I'm holding onto the sword by the pommel, grabbing onto the blade. And I have other options. If you don't feel comfortable or dexterous enough to go grab onto the blade, you can keep on holding onto the pommel and then just deliver a blow with the keons into someone's face. This is just, again, another version of the half sword position, just hands further apart. You can deliver the blow with the keons and then follow through with the action that makes sense.
I was letting go with the wrong hand.
So that's a warm-up that I could have done. It's just getting comfortable switching between lead hand on the handle, left non-dominant hand on the sword, or the other way around. Lead hand on the blade, non-dominant hand on the handle. Both are correct ways to fight. They're just useful in different scenarios. So let's do 8 on each side. Actually, let's do 10 on each side. I will just count them out. Starting with the sword on the right shoulder, we're gonna start do a feint via stramazzone, going to a mordhau, then switch to the other side, and we're gonna do this 10 times. All right? So, fendente 1, feint. Sword on the left shoulder, reverse of fendente, feint. Sword on the right shoulder, 2, fendente feint. Sword on the left shoulder, reverso, feint. Sword on the right shoulder, fendente, feint. Mordhau, reverso, feint. To the mordhau. Number 4, fendente. Reverso. 5, fendente. Recover, reverso. Recover. 6, fendente. Recover, reverso. Recover. 7, fendente. Recover, reverso. Recover. Fendente. This is number 8. Recover, reverso. Recover. 9, fendente. Recover, reverso. Recover. Last one, fendente. Recover, reverso. Recover. All right, grab a quick sip of water if you need to, and then let me know if you have any questions.
Oh, no questions. That reverso side keeps getting me with the letting go with the lead hand.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to practice, just making sure that you can let go with the lead hand so that you can fight with this awkward grip. If you want to have something to practice, a little bit of homework is just practicing single-handed cuts by holding on just to the pommel. See how, obviously, it's more awkward, but you should still be able to fight ever so slightly
Right.
with your left hand, just to get comfortable with, okay, my hand has been ripped, my lead hand has been ripped from my sword. How do I recover?
Right.
This is not useful in terms of, I'm not going to approach a fight like this, but it is useful in terms of, okay, I am in a place where my lead hand is not on the sword. How do I continue fighting and get back to a place where I can continue fighting?
Yeah.
So trying just letting go and trying to do cuts, single-handed cuts with holding onto the pommel. See how that works. You need a little bit more room so that you can use the momentum of the weapon to keep it moving, but it is a useful skill to develop. All right. So the topic of today's class is actually attacks to sword hand. Because there's no hand to attack, they become it's a little bit more difficult to practice. But back to the proportion talk that we had earlier, it's the idea that I'm going to deliver an attack to my opponent's hands. If they do nothing, I hit their hands and then hit them again in the body. If they do anything to defend their hands, it necessarily puts them out of position, either by withdrawing their hands so that their sword is no longer a threat, or by trying to parry and defend their hands and withdrawing again, still withdrawing the threat. I'm not going to spend too much time on what your opponent is doing because it changes, but let's look at the actions that can follow through from here. So one of the advantages of the attack to the sword hand is that it is shorter, it is closer to you, so it's not as big of a commitment. So often how I can imagine this is I'm delivering a fendente. Actually, we'll get to a few ideas of attacking the hand, but I attack the hand with a shorter step. Instead of stepping a little bit further, I take a shorter step because I'm attacking something that's closer. Once they've defended or not, let's say I hit their hands, that's great, their hands are incapacitated, I follow through with a thrust. And that's mostly how a lot of the attacks of sword hand are going to develop is I attack their hands, they respond in a particular way, I follow through with a thrust. So depending on where their sword is, I could, for instance, cut, follow through in fenestra, I can cut, follow through in the opposite fenestra. There's a lot of iterations. That's the basic idea of this scenario. So how we're going to do this is, let's look at the fendentes and the reverse of fendentes actions. I have a few ways to attack someone's sword hands. If, say, I can imagine a target they are in a nice exposed posterior where the hands are up ahead and not further back, I can simply deliver fendente as normal, aiming for their hands. Alternatively, I'm going to use my handy assistant here. One of the alternatives, so right now, I could aim for someone's sword hand just by doing a normal fendente that follows the normal line. This is great, but it's easy to parry. Especially if I'm attacking the sword hand, because I'm further away, it means that I have less concern about the immediate concern from their sword. So I can skew the true fight to attack around their sword. So instead of delivering a fendente like so, I'm actually going to cross my hands and deliver fendente downward like so. So I'm beginning my fendente. I push my pommel underneath my hand so that my hands are crossed, and I can strike around. It's almost like a windshield wiper. The cut is coming from, kind of difficult to see. It's coming from the side, not from where I'm at, but from a different angle. So let me move this out of the way. So I'm doing this fendente. I'm just trying to move it in front. As I'm initiating the action, I cross my hands so that it's still coming down, but it becomes a windshield wiper, and I can strike down into and around someone's hand. Yeah, still done with a true edge. You could do it with a false edge. You can choose. Actually, both are correct. So I can deliver a fendente, follow through with the thrust. I can deliver the roundabout fendente and follow through with a thrust anyway. From the opposite side, I can deliver my reverso, just as normal, follow through with the thrust, and I can deliver my reverso, and I pull the pommel out so that it's almost like I am pointing, instead of pointing forward, I'm pointing horizontal, and I strike down into someone's hand. Then I follow through with the thrust. If I do it from the side, first action, fendente, thrust, recover, second action, fendente with my cross hands, then follow through with a thrust. Recover. Reverso. Thrust. Reverso. Opening up and coming around your opponent's sword, then follow through with a thrust again. Was it clear? Could you see what my sword and my hands were doing before we move forward?
So the same things like crump.
It is exactly that. It is exactly
that. Is there an Italian word for it?
Nope. It is very much German technique. The Italians do not have a name for it. Fiore does not show it actually, he does not show it at all. This is very much a German technique, but it falls within the system of an attack to sword hand, and to use it to understand. If anything, even if you do not want to use it, it's important to understand that it can be done, because someone's going to use it against you. And all you need to be able to defend against it. So for now, let's practice the mechanic. Let's actually just do the Kung Pao mechanic because it's a fun one to do. So we're just going to do a Kung Pao from the right, follow through with a thrust, recover. Kung Pao from the left, follow through with a thrust. And the thrust that you follow through with, up to you to practice. You can do a thrust in posta longa, you can do a thrust in fenestra, or the opposite fenestra. Both are correct. So as with the other exercises, I'm going to call right, left. We're going to do the attack, follow through with the thrust, recover to the opposite shoulder. Okay? Starting on the right shoulder. Fendente. Thrust, recover. Reverso. Thrust, recover. Fendente. Thrust, recover. I'll add one more addendum to this. The timing is important. I am attacking the hands and immediately following through the body. Even if the opponent defends, you can't linger, otherwise you're giving them an opportunity. So it's really, it kind of becomes hand, body, recover. Hand, body, recover. So hand, body, recover. 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 And hand, body, recover. Following the same idea, let's continue with attacks of shorthand from different angles. So one of the mechanics that we practiced earlier in the class was the kind of yielding. From a yielding position, you deliver a rise, a cut to the hands. That's a great way to attack someone's hands because it is often unexpected. So the setup that we'll have here is, I'll start with a thrust coming up into fenestra. I would often do it in opposition, expecting my opponent to either, well, deal with it or not. Once I'm up high, they have to push down on my debole. Once they push down on my debole, they'll force me to begin a yield. And instead of yielding to a fendente or a reverse of fendente, I'm going to yield to a mandretto sultano into their hands. Once I've delivered a strike, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to cut through their hands and finish with a thrust in opposition. So I'm going to get you guys to imagine how you are. There's a sword in posta longa. I am striking it to my outside, lifting it up. You need to parry by pushing down. So you push my sword down that way. Your hands are nice and exposed. I begin my yield that comes into a rising blow into their hands. They either parry or not, that's okay. I cut through their hands. I can even slice back and then follow through with a thrust in opposition to their body. So if I'm doing it from the side, I can start with a thrust. I lift up into fenestra. I get pushed down and I begin a yield. I deliver my rising blow into their hands. The hands have been cut, follow through with a thrust back to their body. I'll do it from this side, so hopefully I'll have a little bit more room. So I begin with a thrust to their body, or to their face, lifting up into fenestra. They push my sword down, I yield, I deliver a rising blow into their hands, cut through, follow through the thrust of their bodies. If I do this smoothly, make sure they have enough space, thrust, yield, cut, thrust. I'll do it from this side, thrust, yield, cut, thrust. Okay? Do it a few times. Let's do it together a few times. Begin the thrust, lift up the fenestra, begin the yield, cut their hands. You've cut their hands, push the sword through into posta longa to deliver final thrust. Let's do it from the opposite side. Starting Porta de Ferro, begin your thrust, come up into fenestra on the opposite side, initiate the yield, cut into their hands, cutting through, continue to thrust into their face by coming to posta longa. Okay, let's try this out, alternating. Starting in Chingera, thrust, high, yield, cut hands, thrust body, recover. Back to Porta de Ferro. Thrust, lift, yield, cut hands, extend throat forward, fossa longa, back to Cinghiara. Thrust to finestra, yield to a reverse to a mangetto sottano, cut hands. Ooh, I stabbed my window. All right, recover. Back to Porta de Ferro. Thrust, lift, yield, cut hands, stab body, recover. Thrust, lift, yield, cut, thrust, recover. Thrust, lift, yield, reverse sottano, cut hands, thrust body, recover. We can smooth it out. You can thrust, lift, cut, thrust, recover. Thrust, lift, yield, cut, thrust, recover. We can go slow. It doesn't, by smoothing it out, doesn't have to be fast. It just removes any pauses. Thrust, lift, yield, cut, thrust, recover. Thrust, lift, yield, cut, thrust, recover. Thrust, lift, yield, cut, thrust, recover. And thrust, lift, yield, cut, thrust, recover. Okay. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of techniques that we've combined today. We've looked at some of the ways that are the feints that attacks and misses can be used to enter grapples. We've started looking at how to compound them together. And this last technique was essentially that. You can really think about it as I'm delivering a thrust. This could be a feint with the expectation that they're going to push my sword. Okay, they push. That allows me to do an attack to miss. Sorry, an attack to their sword hand. Or an attack to miss. Maybe it's a short attack, expecting them to defend. Once they do their action, I can follow through with my thrust. Again, without context of what your opponent is doing, difficult to say how it's actually working. But this allows you to start stringing actions with the intent of keeping them going. So as homework for you, if you're doing your own solo practice, one way to approach this is think about every single one of those actions as actions that strike. Do not practice deceptions. Practice actions that strike with the mechanics that you have in mind. So even if you are doing a feint via stramazzone, it could be a short cut that yields into another cut. So I'm delivering an attack, say, to my opponent's hands or to my opponent's face. I'm striking them, then following through with my action on the opposite side. It could be a cut that I yield to the opposite line so that I can redouble my attack. That's a nice way to consider them so that you don't practice missing. It's very easy to start going, okay, I'm going to practice this feint. And what you end up practicing is just practice an attack that doesn't actually work and doesn't sell it because it's no longer an attack that works. So think as practice for your feints, for your yields, for your attacks to misses. Think about them as every blow hits. Because if your opponent is not doing anything, well, you hit him. And you think about it as I'm stringing multiple attacks together. So I'll give you homework, very explicit homework. Create a combination of 3 to 5 attacks that incorporate an attack to the hand, a yield, sorry, not necessarily a yield, but a stramazzone on your right side and a stramazzone on your left side. And you can have any combination that you want. You can have multiple repetitions of the same sort of stramazzone or attack to hands, but try to create a sequence that you can practice by yourself and going, okay, I'm going to attack from this side, and I'm going to, I don't know, I can make it up right now. I can attack someone's hands, I can attack their hands and come back on the opposite side. Just made that up. I'm just twirling my sword, but it lets you practice the biomechanics of the rotations that will help you execute your deceptions much more effectively. Okay, we still have a few more minutes left. Do you have any questions?
No, not right now. I need more room to practice, but.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish with a bang. sword on your right shoulder. You're going to attack with a fendente, and you're able to. You can attack. You can add either an attack to the hands, or if stramazzone on the inside or stramazzone on the outside, and follow and end with a thrust. So you could simply be cut, thrust, recover the opposite side. Then you're going to attack from this side. You can initiate an attack. You can incorporate a stramazzone, finish, thrust, back on the opposite side. So the simplest version of the exercise is fendente, thrust, recover, reversal, thrust, recover. What you have the option of adding is any of the deceptions or provocations that we've seen in this month. Okay, starting now, go.
So,
Another dance on my ceiling. All right, 10 more seconds. And pause. All right. Any questions? Can you guys hear the banging?
yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's my upstairs neighbor just banging on the railing. So I'll call it a night. Let's have the weapons at a side and salute out. Arte,
Arte.
ardore,
Adore.
onore.
No.
Wonderful. Have a great night. I'll see you guys later.